Hello, everyone. Uh, Wanted to do a video, just with an overview video for this week's reading, which is Plato's Apology. Last week we started by reading the Euthyphro, which is a dialogue, obviously, between Socrates and Euthyphro. This is not a dialogue. This is really a unique document or a unique work within the entire, life's work of Plato, in that it is a speech. There is a little bit in the middle of back and forth when he interrogates one of his accusers, but it really is it's a monologue. It's a speech. Um, it's an account on the part of Plato, who knew Socrates. Socrates and Plato were real people. Um, Plato wrote all of this stuff, and he used this real man that he knew, this older man named Socrates, as kind of the main character, as you saw in the Euthyphro. And Socrates really did um, get indicted for various things. That is, he was accused of various crimes and was executed in 399 BCE. That is, 399 before the Christian era, before the birth of Christ, however you want to put it, which makes it about 2,400 years ago. So they were real events, but how close this is to Socrates' actual speech when he had to defend himself against these charges, no one will ever know, really. I mean, it's very unlikely. This is Plato's version of it. I think Plato was certainly there listening to this speech as a young man. So I don't know. I mean, I think it is an important question, but it's really the only document we have of any substance about what Socrates actually said. But beyond that, it's just a really important document. I mean, in the history of philosophy or Western civilization, the trial and death of Socrates. And we know that the dramatic setting of the Euthyphro was Socrates running into Euthyphro when Socrates was going to the courthouse to answer in a preliminary hearing to this indictment, which has resulted in this trial, which has resulted in this defense speech. So that's what apology really means, apologia or apologia. It's not an apology in the sense of Socrates saying sorry. It's a word for defense. Apologizing for your life doesn't mean saying sorry for the way you've lived, but defending, justifying the way you live. And that's what this is. It's Socrates, answering the charges, and he tells you which ones they are. And in an interesting way, he says there's two sets of charges. There's the charges that have actually been brought up against them that day, the specific charges of corrupting the youth of Athens, of not believing in the same gods that the city believes in. But he believes that there are earlier charges in the form of just prejudices against him that the jury has grown up hearing that he needs to dispel before he can actually have any hope of having a fair trial. And that's another issue. This is a real speech. That is, one has to imagine this being delivered to a jury. I think it must have been outdoors because everything was outdoors pretty much in Athens. But you have to imagine that Socrates is giving this speech before a jury of 500 people, which is, I think, was the typical number of jurors. That is a large crowd, a fairly large crowd, and that to make himself heard, he's simply got to project, and it's very dramatic circumstances. It's almost like theater, really, and I'm sure that to some people it was theater. It's just really interesting to watch a person, especially giving a speech defending their lives, because these are capital offenses, which is another odd thing. Times have changed when you could be executed for corrupting the youth, whatever that means, or you could be executed because you didn't believe in the same gods that were the official gods of the city. It was a different time, certainly. But those are capital charges, and Socrates is defending his life. I don't mean to say that there's anything in particular you have to note about this. Yeah, I don't want to say that there's things that absolutely need to be noted in this work because they're the most important. But what you'll see is that they're very familiar. Many of you will see that they're familiar things, places where Socrates says something to the effect of, all I know is that I know nothing, or later on when Socrates says that the unexamined life is not worth living. There are many kind of really famous little passages here, really touchstones in the history of Western thought. Um, so it's an incredibly interesting work. It again, it's not a dialogue. It's not an inquiry into the nature of something like the Euthyphro was. It's incredibly valuable because it's Socrates getting autobiographical to some extent, because he does have to defend his life. So he has to give an account of himself. What does he actually do, and what sort of service, rather odd service, one may say, but what sort of service does he actually provide for the city of Athens? And that's important too, that this work and then the next one we'll read by Plato, the Credo, both of them to a large extent have to do with Socrates' relationship with his native city, Athens, and what he has or hasn't done for it. Because certainly by being indicted here by these citizens, and again, just like Euthyphro, a private citizen would have to indict another one for a crime. Just as Euthyphro is playing that role of prosecutor of his father, these other men, Anytus and Miletus, are playing the role of the prosecutor for Socrates. He's got this long-standing relationship with the city. He wants to prove that he's actually done it a service, despite the fact that he is been indicted as a corrupter of that city.